Okay, so in this video, we will be running through what are the differences between let, var, and constant, what are functions, function inputs, what are the arrow functions, why do you need arrow functions, a little bit detail on what are global scopes and what are local scopes, as well as how does forEach and map works. So let's just say that you have a son. The moment your son is born, you created a name for him. I will let my son name be Jonathan. When he's born, he will meet his sister, the coffee shop uncle, he will meet his friends. Before that, they will all call him Jonathan. The sister say, "Give me my toy, Jonathan." Then the uncle will say, like, "That's $2.50, Jonathan." Then his friends will say, "Give me the ball, Jonathan." Let's just say that 10 years later, right? 10 years later, Jonathan is kind of sick and tired of his name. So he wants to change a name. He doesn't want Jonathan anymore. He will name himself, let's say, Joseph. So 10 years later, people called him Joseph. So his colleague says, "Give me my toy, Joseph." That's a bit wrong. Maybe you just say like, hand me my work. So his colleague will say like, "Hand me my work, Joseph." Then the uncle will say, "That's $2.50, Joseph." And then his friends will say, "Let's watch football, Joseph." And then you realize that let, it's like giving Joseph or Jonathan a temporary name, right? So this name that is given to him by the father is able to change by Joseph himself in the future. Let is basically a variable that you can change later on. So now let's find out what does constant means. Let's just say that Jonathan is born in the year 1998 and his Chinese zodiac sign is tiger. And then he meet all his little guys when he's young. So his sister says something like, "Your Chinese zodiac is tiger." And then his uncle says, "What is your Chinese zodiac? Tiger?" And then his friend says, "It's unfair you have a tiger Chinese zodiac." So now, 10 years later, Joseph or Jonathan is so tired of people calling him the Chinese zodiac, and he tries to change his Chinese zodiac into, let's say, a pig. And then what happens is that you are unable to give the assignment for changing your Chinese zodiac because your Chinese zodiac is fixed. Constant is giving something that is fixed and you cannot change it after all. The constant variable is to prevent people from repeating the same things twice. If you have set something like a constant, like pi, like something that's fixed, like cosine, formulas, it is all fixed. You can never ever change the value. It is also for developers to prevent bugs. If you have set something like pi is 3.14 and then later on you want to declare pi again, you will have some syntax error and you cannot really perform the code. So you will know that, oh, there is a bug. Previously, I have declared something like pi, so now I need to go back and change. But in your mind, just treat it as if like you are born in that year. You can never ever change the year you are born. If you are born in this year, you are this zodiac. So now let's go through what is var. Let and var is pretty much the same. You can declare something and then you can change it later on. But what exactly are the differences? Because we are using computers, right? So we treat computers as our god. So the differences between var and let is just asking, do you prefer a stricter computer god or you prefer a less strict computer god? Let's just say that before we give birth to Jonathan, we want to ask God what is his name. Whatever below this is after birth, right? This is after birth. Before Jonathan is born, we are going to ask the computer god, who is Jonathan? So we will console.log Jonathan, his son name, right? And then when you run this code, right, you are unable to run it because you are asking for a stricter computer god. So they will never answer you. Whereas if you use the variable var, so now we use the formula var, and then we console log again, it will give us undefined. You're asking for a less strict computer god that gives you the answer as undefined. Basically what you are doing here is that you are asking for a less strict god, asking him what is my son's name. He's like, Jonathan is not even born yet. How are you gonna name him? Right? So this is common sense. So the computer god will reply you as undefined. Whereas if you want a more strict computer god, the computer god would never even reply you. If you use the variable let, he's like, don't even talk to me, right? Don't even ask me before birth. Don't even ask me anything, right? So that's why you get an error. This video will be mainly talking about functions, how you create a functions, how does it work, how do you call a function. How a function works is basically you have to create the word function, and then you just put a name. Let's just say speed attack. So I will create a function named speed attack. How you create a function is basically you create a function, you create a name, and then you create this open bracket. So this open bracket is for you to put values in the future. The open curly braces is basically for you to put what this function does, right? So speed attack, let's just say that console.log ouch, okay? And then we are gonna run this function. The reason why it does not give us anything yet is because that we haven't called this function yet. So to call this function, we just have to put in the name as well as put in the open bracket. So to call this function, we'll just say speed attack and then just open bracket. Now you can call this function as ouch. So what if I want to put in my speed attack as a damage? Speed attack is a Pokemon attack. It attacks the other Pokemon and he will lose, let's just say 25 HP, right? So you just put 25 here, right? And then you realize that why is there something red? You are not supposed to put 25 over here. How function works is that you are calling a function and then you are inputting a value in your call. You are unable to put your call into your function, if that makes sense. So this 25 has to be placed inside your call. Because you are attacking somebody, you are calling a number, right? And then this number will be able to pass into that function. This 25 will be passed over here. And then you will name this bracket something. Let's just say that we just name it as damage, okay? Let's just name it as damage. So we will say something like this hits, and then we will put the damage at the back. So wherever I put this, I console log this, it will give me this answer. This hits 25. What this does is that this 25 will be passed over here, will be passed inside the function, and then this function will be passed inside the curly braces, if that makes sense. Let's just say that this function, besides finding out the attack of this function, you are able to put in the HP value of the opponent, let's just say, right? So to input more than one value, you can do a comma. Let's just say that I want to set the HP of my opponent as 100. And then now I have two values. If I were to do this function, it will give me 100. That's because the first value is passed into the function. This function will run the console log. So it only takes the first value. However, you want to put in more than one value, you have to put in more commas. So if I want to declare this as HP, I will run this HP at the front. So now it will take my first value as HP, right? My 100 as HP. And if I were to run this, it will still give me 25 because my damage is at the back. The first value takes in the 100, the second value takes in 25. And then because my console.log did not take in the first value but taking the second value, it will input the second value. So now let's just say that I want to put in more things. Same thing, console.log. I will put in a name like his HP is HP. Last but not least, I'll run something like console.log and then his remaining HP is, and then I'll put in HP minus damage, right? I hope this is simple to understand. So let's find out. His HP is 100. This hits 25. His remaining HP is 75. So what this does is basically it captures the first value as 100. So 100 is stored in the speed attack function. 25 is stored in the damage variable. This HP will be input over here. So his HP is 100 because it takes from the call. And then this hits, right? So the same thing, 25 is taken to the function, and then 25 is logged into the console.log. And then last but not least, his remaining HP is HP minus damage. So you can either take it from here, you can either go all the way one loop, or you can just take it from here. So HP, take from here, 100, damage, take from here, 25. So that is how a function works. We will be going deeper into arrow function next. Arrow function basically converts the entire function into a single call. Basically, your whole entire JavaScript journey, you will come across arrow function. So arrow function is a must to learn. Let's find out why and how arrow function works. Let's just go back to where we left off. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do something special. I'm just gonna copy this, right? I'm gonna paste it, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide the first thing, right? So let's just see if this works. We have written here works. We are gonna separate the name function outside of a variable. So we are basically gonna separate the name and a function into two different bridges. So one bridge will have the same thing, another bridge will have the same thing. So what we are gonna do is that we are gonna, instead of doing this, we are gonna remove the speed attack. We are gonna input it at the front, and then we are gonna put an equal sign. If you compare the first and this, we are just moving the name outside of the function. However, this name is still a function, right? Let's just save it again. It works. It's the same. So now what we have done is that we have successfully moved the name out of the function, and then we are declaring it as a standalone name. So now can we do something a lot more special? Okay, so I need you to pay attention here. We are going to copy this to the next line, and then we are going to hide this. Let's just find out if this works. Let me control save. It works. So what we are going to do now is that we are moving this function behind our bracket, right? So we are going to remove this. We are going to put it behind the inputs, right? We are going to put it behind. Okay, I know this doesn't work, but do not afraid. Instead of putting the name function, we are going to change this function into an arrow. You just put an equal sign as well as the greater than symbol. And then you're gonna put this arrow, replace the function with the arrow. This will work. So let's just save it again. Now it works. So there are still one more step, so just stay tuned. So what we have done is basically this function, it was the first ever function. What we did is that we have split this name outside of the function. So this name equals to this function. And then now, instead of doing this, we are putting the function into an arrow. So we have successfully converted the function into an arrow. And then this still works. The final step, we are removing the name, and we will make everything a single call. We will remove the name, right? Don't be afraid. We are gonna put in a bracket, an open bracket and a close bracket. An open bracket and a close bracket at the end. And then what we are going to do is we'll remove the name here as well. So now let's find out if this works. It still works. We have completely vanished everything. We have completely removed the name. We have completely removed every single detail in the arrow function. And then we are just calling it straight away. Just put in the bracket, put in two values, call it instantly. This is what we do. So this is what you call a single use function. You are only using this once. That's all. In the future, you will be using like forEach map. What they are going to do is that they are going to call the function straight away. So that is why you need to know that you are able to hide the name, but you are still able to call the function once. We'll be running through everything we have learned so far. So now we have learned a few things, right? We are able to create a function. We are able to create the input. We are able to convert the function into a name. We are able to convert the function into an arrow function. We are able to make this arrow function, and then we are able to remove the name, but still call the arrow function. And the concept is that you are able to put in a function, you can just bracket the function and you are able to call it straight away, if that makes sense. So let's find out an example how this works, because I haven't run through what does array means, right? Array is basically just like a bunch of things that's stored in a cabinet. So I have this array of numbers that is stored in a cabinet. I want to call every single number once. There is a function, it's called forEach. So how this works is that I will put in the array, I will dot forEach, right? And then I will open bracket and I'll put in the function. Let's just say that we are a beginner. We don't know anything about functions, right? So we will create a function inside. Let's just say that we will create a function name inside. Our function name is multiply, right? So what this multiply does is that we are trying to multiply everything inside by 2. We'll create a function multiply console.log elements. Okay, and then we are gonna put in this element in the function. Does it give me an output? Okay, so it does give me an output. So what it does is basically in your for each bracket you can only contain functions, and then this function has to be called somewhere else. For each will run through every single element. So what does element mean? So your element is basically your 1 2 3 4 5, right? Your 1 2 3 4 5 is your element. As if you don't know, you can always look at my previous video, the for loop video. And then your array is basically your entire chain, right? Your entire 1 2 3 4 5 is your array. And then your index is your 0 1 2 3 4. So to explain this even further, in your element is like your little numbers in each cabinet. Your array is your entire cabinet, and then your index is like the first value is 0, your second value is 1, your third value is 2, etc. It actually runs through a function. This function is called forEach, right? forEach is actually a function, and this forEach function calls another function, and this multiply function has been called directly. Remember what we have did over here? Basically, if you were to bracket a function, it will be called immediately. It will immediately call this multiply function, and it will give him elements. It passes through this function, it will give him like a 1, it will give him 2, it will give him 3, it will give him 4, it will give him 5. So let's just say the first iteration we put in 1. So you have this function, 1 has been put in. So your 1 is your element. And then what it does is that it logs the first element. It says 1. So your first output is 1. And then the same thing happens because for each is like going through every single loop. So it takes the second element, which is 2, and then it passes into the multiply function, and then the multiply function put in 2 as a input, and then this input will console.log input. So it will be 1, and then it will output 2, and so forth. So that's how it works, but it doesn't solve the issue. You are still not changing anything, right? It still returns the same thing. So if you want to change something, you want to change the output. Let's just say that I don't want 1 2 3 4 5. I want 2 4 6 8 10. You can do that also, but it's a bit trickier. Instead of doing element times 2, right? This doesn't work. You know why? So let's just find out why. It still gives you the same thing. The reason why it doesn't work because you are not reassigning something. So this element has been multiplied by 2, but you are not reassigning the element, right? If that makes sense. Because for each function, it does not return any value. It only performs things inside. Even console.log is just a performance, that's all. So if you want to return something, you want to update something, you want to update an element, you have to do element equals to element times 2. So now it gives you 2 4 6 8 10. So this function can actually be simplified. So how you actually simplify it is bring the whole thing inside. So what I mean is that you can copy the whole thing, and then you can just put it inside the for each. So you'll look a bit messy, so just arrange a bit, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and just find out if it's true. So it's just like, you're trying to reduce the unnecessary things over here, right? So if you take a look at here, it's like, it's a bit messy, right? It's a bit messy. How can I make it a lot more cleaner, right? But instead of putting all these kind of names, which is unnecessary, right? You can remove the multiply name. Okay, remove it. Let's just test it if it works. It still works. Okay, then next you're gonna do is you're gonna remove the function. You're gonna put it at the back, and then you're gonna change the function into an arrow. So just remove it, put it equal, and then put it the greater than. Let's test if it works. Okay, it still works. I think this is the max you can do. Maybe if you take a look at this, you might still not understand. Basically doing an array and then dot for each. And then inside here, you are supposed to place your function. But instead of placing all these messy things, right, just put a open element, which is your bracket, open bracket, which is your element, your input, and then put an equal sign, arrow function, do the open braces, right? And then this is where you put your execute function. This is where you execute function, and then this is your element. So basically you are just, to simplify even further, right? Like maybe this is not simplified enough for you. To simplify even further, you are just basically putting an element, and then you are just gonna execute the element in the execute function. So element is our input, and then element equals to element times 2 is the output, and then we are just gonna output this. So that is how you do for each, if that makes sense. Okay, so welcome back to the next video. In the last video, we talked about how you can actually execute this arrow function. So now we will do something similar to for each, but we are using the map function. We'll be doing array.map, and then we'll put in some values inside. However, you must understand, for map function to work, you have to redeclare another thing, right? Because map is just a function itself. You have to assign something to that function. Just like a function doesn't return anything itself, you have to create a variable before it so that it returns the variable to the first variable. So we are going to reassign something. Let's just say that new array equals to array.map. And then in this array.map, well, we will do the same thing, right? We will do a open bracket. This is our element, and then equals to, right? And then the open braces, element multiplied by 2. Simple as that. I think that's quite simple. So you can expect us to return 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's the same thing, right? However, it's not. You are just telling the function to multiply all the elements by 2. But you are not telling the function to give you a new answer. So you always, in map function, you always have to use the return formula, right? So you always have to put in a return at the front. A return at the front. And then, now it has successfully returned 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. To check it out, you just have to do console.log new array. Let's find out if it multiplied. Yes, it does. Let's just go through a little bit deeper. So in this video, we will be finding out some of the functions such as find index. We'll be using some function, some function. We'll be using every function. We'll be using sort function. We'll be using set timeout function. Just some random functions I find from my class, and we're just gonna share it over here. So hope you enjoy, and we'll be diving back to where we left off. Okay, let's just copy the same thing over to the new page. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this time around we'll make this extremely random. So let me just make it extremely random, put in some really weird numbers. Okay, let's just assume that we have bought some Toto. We have bought in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We bought in a System 12, which cost like $400. And then we are trying to find out if our number matches the lottery result. Let's just say that this Toto, instead of 50 numbers, we have 100 numbers, right? So we have 72 and such. We are going to find out if we have this Toto number. We are going to use the formula sum. So how you perform sum is the same thing as what we did previously. Basically, we are just going to use array.sum, and then we are just going to do the same thing. This thing, the arrow, and the braces. So this is our input, which is our element, right? Let's just put in element equals to, let's just say that we are finding out if we get the 42 number. We're going to find out, right? So we are going to return a result. This thing alone is just a function, so we are going to assign something. Is 42? Okay, so this is our new declaration, because this whole chunk is a function, right? So we are just going to run this. So it should return me true, because we have the number 42. What about 69? False, we don't have a number 69. And then for dot every, it's like if everything has the same number. Okay, now we are going to find index at 42, because we are not sure which index is 42. And then they will tell us the index is 6. We can also do something like sort. So as you can see, this number is kind of messy, and we are trying to sort it in an ascending order. So basically, you do array.sort, and then you're gonna put in what everyone does, right? So it's just open the input, the arrow, and the open braces. That's all. Okay, and then we are going to put in, instead of one element, we are going to put in 2 elements, because this element will tell us whether it is an ascending order or a descending order. That's it. To differentiate it, you can just put in element A and then element B. This output, usually if you use element A minus element B, it will be smallest to biggest. It will be in ascending order. So let's find out element A minus element B. Because this is just a function, we are going to assign a name to the function, or I mean a result. So let's just put result equals to this. Okay, so we will console.log the result. That's it. Okay, let's find out the result. And the result is let me just remove the previous one. And the result is ascending order. So you must understand the reason why it did not output. It's because every single formula, you always need to return something. Just treat everything as a map function. You always need to return something. So let me just return element A minus element B. Okay, so it has now successfully sorted. You have to understand all these kind of formula, you always have to put in return inside. The reason why you can choose not to put return is unless you are making it a global scope. So if you make it a global scope, you are removing the curly braces, and now this will be a global scope. And now this will work as well. However, if you put in the curly braces, right, it's now a local scope. So now it doesn't show the formula. For descending order, it's the same thing. You have to put in B to A, B minus A, or you can use your way to memorize it. And then now we should have a descending order, 72, etc, 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 right? So hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next video regarding about objects.